Yeah, so I came home that night and I was looking at my wrinkled hands and I went, where's my ring? And I did it in such a way, I was like right in front of Mariah, and she was like, where's your ring? Well, currently I'm the production manager for the Utah Film Commission, which means that I work with both incoming productions to the state and with the indigenous projects and production companies here in the state to help them find resources like crew and support services, vendors, and especially locations. Well, they call it show business, and half of it is business. They're usually looking at the bottom line, and they consider crew rates and incentives, especially proximity to California if they're an LA-based production, locations that add production value, the amazing cast and crew that we have here as well. Those are all factors they consider. To be honest, it's not enough. We are coming into this new fiscal year and we're expecting to be out of incentives probably by the end of the first quarter. So, which is, I mean, it's a good problem to have. Yeah, so we look at every project through an application process. They supply us with their script, their budget, their estimated Utah spend amount, number of Utah hires, number of Utah cast and crew hires, I should say. And we look at all of that. We kind of run every project through a metric system. We look at other factors like, are they shooting in a rural area? Are they considering shooting Utah as Utah? And based on a point system, we decide which projects move forward that we present to the Governor's Office of Economic Development's Board of Directors for approval. I'd say the one project that I think we worked the hardest on that I was the most proud of after the fact would be John Carter for Disney. Yeah, that was a team effort, and there were a lot of factors that came together at the right time to attract that film to Utah. Even though looking back on it, where else should they have filmed? I think the feedback that I get from filmmakers after they've shot here is the willingness for the communities to get behind the films. They're used to shooting in more callous areas like Los Angeles and New York and other places where there's a lot more production. And our communities really step up and rally behind these projects and want to become involved. They're also very enamored by our Utah crew. Several projects have then done their next project, whether or not it's in Utah, involving the Utah crew that they met with their first project. So. When I read a script and start to visualize it here in Utah and then to see the final product on the screen and perhaps a suggestion that I sent early on in the pre-visualization process of sending them a location packet with photo suggestions, and to see that actual location on the big screen is, it's nice to know you had a part in that. So, yeah. My first job on location was for Benji Off the Leash, and I was a locations assistant, on-set locations assistant. My job was to sit in a field and make sure that anybody that happened to come to set, it was my job to take them around set. I needed to sit with the equipment during lunch when the cast broke or when they broke for lunch, and And then my other job was to pick up trash at the end of the day. And I thought, this is the coolest job ever, so relaxed. And then we moved to our second location, and we moved every day after that. And I realized how stressful that job can be. So. You know, I came up through the art department prior to that. So I found like my skill set was better served in the locations department. I loved interfacing with people, meeting people, telling them, hey, we're going to need to park a vehicle here, paying people for site rental fees, filling out permits. I enjoyed all of it. So. Oh yeah. Not the only time I met Marshall when I worked in location. Well, actually I met him twice. First time was on Benji Off the Leash when they were filming an episode. They were doing a tech scout for Touched by an Angel, and he might not remember this, but they came to Eccles Avenue in Ogden, and I remember meeting him then. And then it was maybe a couple of years later when I was working on the television series Everwood, that Marshall showed up to set as part of the film commission. And at that time, I thought they were a regulatory agency, and we were just to make sure that, you know, cords were covered with mats and things. But and then, of course, years later, I ended up working with Marshall, and that's when I'd say he gave me the most advice. Very good. Yeah. So Jeremy Reish and Cameron, the director, Bossert. Really nice of them to give me that credit. I was solely working with them as my role at the Film Commission at the time. I think that was their way of, in lieu of a very special thanks credit, that they gave me the location scout credit. I'd given them a lot of suggestions for the film. So. That's a good question. There are certain aspects I certainly miss. I miss the camaraderie of being on set with a bunch of people that you spend 12 to 14 hours a day with for several weeks. They become your family. I miss a lot of those people, working day in, day out with them, and having a common goal, you know, to finish a project. My new family at the Film Commission is great. It's probably the best it's ever been. We all get along very well, and all look forward to coming into work every day. So. When it comes to film, I think my uncle, he was, it's passed away now, but he was a cinephile, and turned me on to a lot of different films back when I was, 10 years old. I used to go to his place and stack up. He collected Betamax, and he had at one point in time one of the fifth largest personal collection in the U.S. So I would stack up Betamax films and just watch them one right after another, and then later DVDs when I'd visit him, him and my aunt. But they've both been very influential in that respect. So I think they gave me an appreciation for film, and not only did he have a really great taste in film, and he'd know all the backstories of all the filmmakers and the actors and their relations, and fill me in as we'd watch these films. So it was always fascinating. That's a really great question. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we're both at similar events, the same events. What they do at the Film Center with exhibition is a lot different than what we do with the Film Commission, and so there is some spillover, some crossover, but we try not to overdo it at either of our jobs, and with respect to the events that we sometimes go to. But you'll often see me alone, and you'll often see her alone at her events, just because there's so much else going on, and we have 2 small children too. So yeah. I'd say be proactive. If you want to become a filmmaker, there's free software out there. There are, you have a camera on your phone. There's ways of showing your ability. You start writing, take a screenwriting course. But if there are certain disciplines in the film industry that you'd like to pursue, our resource directory that we have through our website is a great way to be proactive and reach out to people. You know, if say you wanted to become an electrician or a grip, look up the gaffers and the best boys that are listed in our resource directory. Just send them a simple email and say, hey, how do I become involved? Absolutely. So the Fear No Film Festival is in its 16th year. It's a shorts film festival, international one, that runs in conjunction with the Utah Arts Festival. And it was my predecessor was the coordinator for the last 12 years, and I had served as a juror for the film festival for many years during that 12 years. And this is my creative outlet, if you will, and a way to give back to the community is how I look at it. We have, with Sundance in our backyard, for instance, and some of the other really great film festivals, the Utah Arts Festival kind of brings the best of the art world to Utah, speaking regionally. And I took that same approach with the programming for the Fear No Film Festival. So we had 12 different Sundance films. We had shorts that were from all around the world. We had 24 countries represented. There were 28 first-time filmmakers. We wanted to make sure there was diversity and parity, and we were at 42% female directed films for the Shorts Film Festival. Yeah.
What's the future hold for you?
Oh, if I knew that, I'd probably. That's a really good question. Yeah, I've been with the Film Commission now for 12 years. This first time programming a film festival, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice creative outlet, and I feel my skill set fit that rather well. I don't know, so I love my job now. I think I do an okay job at it, and as long as, things stay as is, I hope to have, at least 5 more years there. So. Well, from the production manager's standpoint with the Utah Film Commission, the Utah Film Studios, they're another tool in my belt, if you will. It kind of feels like before just having the incentives and really great crews and locations, that's great, but we're missing out on these great opportunities like the television series Yellowstone and some of the other larger productions that, besides film incentives, one of the first requests they make is, where are your film studios? So prior to the Utah Film Studios, we filmed in converted warehouses, and that works for smaller projects, but for a project of Yellowstone scale and size, there's no way they'd be elsewhere.